No, I don't think so. All right, welcome back to another episode of Your Platform Podcast. I have a reoccurring guest. First time I had somebody back on, but this is going to be a little bit of a unique show. David Cruz, who him and I are discussing spinning off a show and doing our own thing where we talk about some current events, politics, sports, books, pretty much anything. I think that we'll co-host it together. But welcome back. This is your second opportunity to do a podcast.
Yeah, it's an honor to be back. It just hit me when you said I'm the first one.
Yeah, your first one,
to
bro.
be.
First one.
Yes.
And you know, I'm very type A. I think we all know that. I take things and I want to run with it. But I think it's the idea behind having objective thoughts. I have no problem pissing people off. That's something that I can't control, how you feel. But I do think where we are today in society that we have to have more of that kind of objective discussion. And unfortunately, politics does a lot of that for us. And not just politics, it could be religion. It could be really any idea in this day. So to have this show and spin off and do it with someone like you is very insightful, and have the thoughts that you do. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how that goes.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I've had a lot of interesting conversations with people the last 12 years, specifically when I think about politics, but about all types of topics. And I've noticed without even trying, I've pissed a lot of people off myself, and just have to learn to accept that, because you can't please everyone. So
you definitely can't. So the first thing I wanted to talk about and was the Electoral College. I think someone who's been following politics now for, I'd say, 8 years consistently, and kind of seeing how things have unfolded and how things get messy in the political realm. I guess I didn't really understand the Electoral College until I started doing the research today. And a couple of things that I wanted to talk about was mainly the idea that the president could get the popular vote but still not win the election, and that they would have to receive at least 270, whoever's the most, right? That if I'm understanding correctly, it's 270 votes, which those votes come from, I think it was 400 state reps and 100 senators. I can't remember what the other ones fall, the 30, and there was like 33 and 1 or something like that. I almost seem that sounds like that's just like a disadvantage, especially. And also I get the other side of things, right? Where, a state like California, for example, being as large of a state as it is, mainly blue, and where they vote Democrat, and it could be adverse to a different state like Georgia, for example, that's much smaller than that. I get it, but it kind of seems off. What's the history behind that you know?
First off, I want to say that it's great to start off this podcast with a bang, really popular, fun topic like the Electoral College. Yeah. I'm sure we're getting everybody excited about this topic.
Yeah.
But the Electoral College, from my understanding of it, I love how it works. It's a very unique process of how we elect our president. And now all you hear about is defending democracy. We have to save democracy. You hear that you hear that word thrown around a lot now. Mm-hmm. And people use it really loosely. We don't really live in a democracy, because democracy really just means majority rules. You need 51% of the vote to win. What we live in is a republic where we elect people to represent us. So the concept of Electoral College is basically you have 51 different popular votes throughout the country, 50 states and DC. So you're doing a popular vote in each state, and you're voting for the electors to elect your president. So each state has a different number of electoral votes depending on its population. So I think there's a number, I think it's 538 total electoral votes, which is the number of representatives in Congress, and then 3 from DC, which equals 538, something like that. And it's 100 senators. It's 100 votes for the senators, because it's 2 senators per state, and then it's the House of Representatives, which is determined by the population of the state. So that's why California, I think, has 54 electoral votes, and Connecticut has 7. And every 10 years, the census happens, and that could rearrange depending on people moving out of states, moving in states. It gives other states more votes. If people move in, like Florida recently, probably have a few more electoral votes because a lot of everybody's moving to Florida. California might lose a few votes because everybody's moving out of California.
Interesting.
So, and the reason they do it is to really give, I think the reason they do it is because it gives everybody in the country, it makes their vote as equal as possible, in my opinion, because just because you live in a populated area doesn't mean your vote should be worth more than someone that lives in a rural area. Right? Because if it was just a straight popular vote, politicians, what would they do? They would just go to the most popular metro areas and forget about the person living in the middle of nowhere.
That's a good point.
Right? So that's why sometimes you have a popular, I think it was in 2000, I think it was Al Gore got the most they got the most votes in the country, popular.
500,000 more votes than George Bush.
But he lost the electoral. Yeah. So the famous quote that they say for democracy is when 2 wolves and a sheep vote on what's for dinner. Right. What the Electoral College does is it prevents a tyranny of the majority. Because if it's just 51%, the majority is always going to rule and it's always going to dominate the minority. So I like it. I think it's a brilliant way to, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a brilliant way to prevent tyranny and to make sure the minority, people living in rural, wherever, have a vote.
So then there's been discussion then that the Electoral College should be eliminated, right? Over the last couple of years, or I guess the last couple election cycles, I should say.
They've been talking about it forever, but the last 2, they've been talking about it a lot.
Why?
Why? Because people are upset that their side lost.
Yeah.
And when things don't go their way politically, then people want to change things up all of a sudden, change things the way they've been done for the past, decades, hundreds of years or so. Now all of a sudden, because things didn't go the way you wanted it to go, now all of a sudden we have to switch up this whole process. So that's why the talk is more now than before.
Politics for me, 2016, you introduced me to kind of what was happening. I got red pilled, if you will. I got to see things from more of a different perspective, being a homeowner, wanting to start a family. And more recently, I'm reading that. I printed this out. This is actually something I'm reading because I want to take the emotion out of politics. And the reason why I want to take the emotion out of politics is because I think that in 2020, I was very emotional about everything. We had, a pandemic going on. You had, a bunch of different ideas of what was right, what was wrong.
It was a very unique time.
Very unique time for sure.
Yeah.
And I printed this out mainly because I want to understand 2 things. There's 2 things that I think go into this. So the article, there's a research article that's called "The Effects of Information on Social Conformity and Opinion Change," and I wanted to get a better grasp as to, one, why do I feel the way I feel? Why do others feel the way they feel when it comes to politics, when it comes to ideas, religion, all that stuff. So the one thing that I'm going to read it to you, a couple of things. So it says, we find that while information plays a role in changing a person's opinion, the social delivery of that information has the greatest effect. And I said, wow, that's huge. Like, think about, we got Twitter, we got Facebook, Instagram, all the information's out there. And it made me feel like, holy moly, like a lot of the stuff that I follow is mainly one way. So naturally, I'm going to lean more towards that.
Right.
Now, most of it makes sense to me. But the other thing that I had read here says, beyond politics, there's an experimental evidence that the propensity to conform out of a desire to either be liked or to be right. When I got heavy into politics, and again, that 2020 area, I found myself in that category. Not the category to be liked, but the category to be right.
To be right. Okay.
And I remember talking to people whether it be about the shots or to be about the particular president, I found myself getting really upset that the individuals don't
See it
see
your
it
way.
my way.
Yeah.
And as you know, 4 years now, we're 4 years removed from that. It shouldn't be that way. In with respect to my idea of what I think is happening in this economy, in this political landscape, in the world, I still think that it's jacked up, but I don't think that we land in a place of a neutral place if I want you to be like, oh, think just like me. You know what I mean? I think that we have to be able to have these kind of objective thoughts. And this kind of is opening my eyes to like, and again, my eyes have been kind of open over the last couple months, and I've shared this with you outside of doing this and whatnot, but it's okay not to agree with what someone else says. And I feel like where we are politically, it's intentional that they're like pushing one way. And I think it comes from both sides. Like,
What, they're pushing either one way or the other?
correct. I think it does come from both sides. Like, we do see, like, for example, you know, one of the things that I saw, and I didn't like it, and I sent it to you, and people know who I'm going to vote for. Everybody knows who I'm going to vote for. But when Donald Trump came out and said, "Oh, you know, I don't agree with Joe Rogan's endorsement," which Joe Rogan didn't endorse RFK, but when he came out and said, "Oh, I don't agree with it," and he's going to get booed and at the next UFC event, it's kind of like, why? Like, what was the purpose of that?
Yeah.
He's probably right, but I can see how people see him as unhinged when things like that happen.
Yeah.
Where do you think we can go from this, like, such divisive, and I mean, it doesn't seem good.
It's natural for us to want to, we get our biases from somewhere. Nobody's not biased. Nobody's completely objective. We have our reasons why we think certain ways.
Sure.
And once we grow older and figure out why we think certain ways and why we have our ideologies, yeah, we're going to listen to shows, listen to podcasts that we agree with. The danger is sometimes we listen to only that.
Yes.
And where you think to yourself, well, all this makes sense to me.
Right.
He's a bigot. He's trying to save America. Whatever it is, that's what you truly believe. Whether it's because whether that's because you truly believe that, or because you've just been told that and you think there's no other way that can be. Right. So when you hear a different opinion, like, well, I don't understand why you think like this.
Yeah.
How do you think like this?
Right.
Do you not see what's going on?
Right.
And it's from both sides. And all you hear nowadays, and what you've been hearing the last few, election cycles, is the word tribalism. We're very tribal right now. It has to be, pick a side. Which side are you on? This or that? I can have my views, but I try my best to leave emotion out of it. Because what I've learned in life, not just in politics, but in life in general, when you're too emotional, all logic goes out the window. So it prevents you from really seeing things clearly, right? It prevents you where, okay, the media is super biased. The media is trying to lure you to a certain viewpoint, right? Are you going to let them do that to you, or are you going to recognize what it is that they're trying to do, so that way you can make your own decision, right? Are you going to watch the news to be informed, or are you going to watch the news just to see what they're trying to show you,
right?
And that way this is the agenda they're trying to push, right? I don't know where we go from here, because it doesn't seem to be getting any better. It's as if they don't want us to get better, right? It's as if they want us to keep us divided and distracted, right? Because they're getting rich off the top. I mean, it all goes back to that. I mean, the people in Congress, they're getting rich. Right. So why would they want us uniting if it's only gonna be bad for them, right? It's only gonna make things worse for us. Like this whole thing with the economy, there's no plan to fix the economy. This is all done by design. Right. Anybody, if you really open your eyes, you see is being done on purpose. Right. All the printing of the money, the inflation of the money, all that. There's no plan to fix it.
Yeah.
And why is that? That's another conversation that we can get into as far as, all this is doing is depleting the middle class little by little by little. And that gap is widening and widening as much as possible. So do you want that to happen on purpose? Right? When the economy collapses, is that opportunity for the government to come in to control because we're going to be asking them to, because we're struggling so much that will ultimately want more power? Do these people really care about us, or do they just want to stay in power?
Yeah.
If they care about us,
they back off.
If they cared about us, why would they let this happen?
Right.
I thought that all these smart people were in government, all these smart economists, all these people that care about the border and the people and all this type of stuff. Why did they get elected? Why did you let it get to this point where we are right now?
It's crazy how people don't see that the border is a problem. I think I obviously will say this very loosely, but I'm pretty sure when 9/11 happened, they traced the 9/11 terrorists back to crossing the border at that time in 2001. That's my biggest fear of, so someone who has
they crossed in Canada, right?
Whatever border.
I think they crossed. Whatever.
Again, I don't, like I said, I say it loosely because that's what I heard. Obviously, my mind goes to what's happening down in the southern border,
right?
But it goes to that because of the recent catchings of people who were on the terrorist watch. That panics me a little bit. It doesn't. Most people, like, I had a conversation with somebody last December. We were sitting down having dinner, and I told them, who I was going to vote for. He's like, "You're really going to vote for that guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to vote for him." Like, this is just kind of. He's like, "Oh, I think." He's like, I'm pro socialism and all that stuff. And I'm like, all right, cool. And I told him, like, the border is a problem. He's like, it's not a problem. Like, that's not going to, be an issue to you. Like, I'm like, you're seeing, people getting murdered by immigrants who've come into this country over this last 4 years. Like, that's a problem. And he's like, well, it's not going to happen to you. You're like, it's just, that's something that, but obviously, I don't think it's going to happen to me, but the fact that it's happening, you just never know. It's like, that thing that really concerns me. So, like, the border is a big issue. I want to show you something real quick. At the DNC, let me pull this up quickly because I think it was really interesting. How much are you following the DNC right now?
A little bit.
A little bit. All right.
Whatever reels they show on social media.
All right. So check this out. All right. So the DNC, the Democrats have no vision or solution for the country. Democrats have no vision or solution for our nation's problems. Last night, this is from Trump Vance. This was posted on Truth Social. Democrats have no vision or solution to our nation's problems. Last night's convention was solely focused on President Trump. They said Trump 147 times. They mentioned some of the other stuff: the border 8 times, economy 27 times, inflation 3 times, prices 5 times, and crime 6 times. Someone who, again, is when I think about voting and what I'm going to vote for, that's what I'm going to vote for. I'm going to vote for the border. I'm going to vote for the economy, right? And inflation. Like, those are, obviously inflation and economy go kind of hand in hand, but that's what I'm going to vote for. The fact that they're coming in and saying that we're going to fix all these problems.
Problems they created.
That they created.
Yeah.
But at the DNC mentioned Trump 147 times, shows me that they're absolutely not serious at all with what they're trying to do for this country. And it almost is a slap in the face of every American. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, but, like, if they're 100% just worried about him and not what's happening here.
Well, they can't sit there and run on their successes because they didn't really have much to run on. So they have to fearmonger the other guy because he's so horrible.
Right.
I don't understand how the border is a left-right issue.
I don't
at all. Because any other country in the world, people will tell you a country is defined by strong borders. Right? Not that they don't want anybody in, but they just want to make sure they know who's coming in. A system is controlled, right? You can't just have it wide open. Otherwise, there's no country. Or otherwise, it's an invasion, because that's, what it is. I mean, we'll call them refugee statuses or whatever. You let that many people in. Now, I tried to get caught up in what I see in the news, because the news is showing you what they want to show you for whatever reason.
Sure.
So they might be showing you people climbing fences, getting caught up in hiding out in trucks, crossing the border, whatever it is. that stuff might have been happening, probably has been happening for decades before. It's happening now. Maybe it's happening more now. I just look at the fact that whether you're left or right, how do you not want strong borders? How do you not want to know who's coming into your country or not? Right? And they say numbers don't lie. So if the numbers of the border crossings are up, however many, 300 or 3,000%, whatever it is, how do you argue against those numbers? Right. So I don't understand how that's become a left-right issue. If you're against the borders, you're against your own country. Like I don't really get that. Yeah. And the thing with what you just showed me, the interesting thing is that the Democrat Party has been in office 12 out of the last 16 years.
I saw that. Yeah,
I believe.
I saw that.
And I heard it too recently. And, if you really think about it, you could figure it out yourself. Yeah. But, if this country was if they're doing such an awesome job and they're going to fix things on day one, we'll fix what?
Right.
The last 4 years, they've been in power. So I don't really understand what this whole, we're going to fix things on day one. Why haven't you been fixing things before? And it goes back to what I said about the economy. There's no plan to fix it.
No,
there's no plan at all to fix it.
I don't like using the term gaslight a lot, but that's what that is.
That's a new age term.
It is a new age term.
I hear a lot of women say that.
Gen Z is they incepted that term right there. I feel like, but that's what they're doing. When I get the concept of what gaslighting is, it's, hey, look here, but we're doing this here.
Right.
But people still don't care. And I think that's what scares me the most. Like, they don't care that this stuff is happening at that level. They completely ignore it. And maybe they're ignorant, and maybe they just see the other side being that much terrible. And I had this conversation with somebody the other day. The second that Trump named JD Vance as, and I'll say, I don't know much about JD Vance. I don't know much about Tim Walz. About Tim Walz.
I just know he was the governor of Minnesota during BLM.
Yeah. So Tim Walz, I know a little bit and that, but when Trump announced JD Vance, the second he did, it was the ads and everything came out about him being, very
horrible and terrible, weird and something.
I can't see in this. It's hard. With the way the media is, and that's why I love X and what Elon's doing. The way the media is, I can't see it ever changing because everything is so left leaning. The ABCs, the CNNs, the CBSs and whatnot. And the Democratic Party forced Joe Biden out. They forced him out. I mean, it was a legit. Like, I think I saw something earlier today that that Obama said that Biden has the Democratic Party has to fall in line. What's that mean? Like, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
So it just I can't see that any Republican, it could be it could be, someone like Tulsi Gabbard, she's a woman, right? But they would find a way to slander her. She's active, or I think she's a reserve in the army.
Well, she was debating Hillary Clinton a few years back because she was running for president originally.
Oh, was she?
Against Trump.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she ran against Hillary and called Hillary.
Oh yeah,
out
she's a Democrat.
And right after that debate, they were destroying her in the media.
Yeah,
destroying her. She's the Democrat.
She's a Democrat. And again, I'll say both sides. I won't just say the one side. I think that they're playing with American people's lives. That's kind of how I feel. Like, there's literally playing with America. But why? That's the only part. I don't understand why. Like, what? Because they want to get rich. Like the fact that nuclear war is a potential, like, we're closer to nuclear war than ever before. Like,
and who's in charge?
Right. Like,
the guy you've been telling us for 2 years is competent and the smartest guy ever. Yeah. Now all of a sudden he's not competent enough to run office. Right. All of a sudden.
Right.
Okay, so he's stepping down. If something was to go down, God forbid, seriously, well, who's
make the call?
Who's in charge?
Who's gonna make the call?
And that's a serious question.
Right.
I don't know the answer to.
I don't. That's scary. That's scary to think.
There's a lot of fear mongering going on, and it's always that's the politics game right there. It's just fear monger the other side to scare them into voting for you. Right? Don't tell me what you're gonna do for me. Don't tell me how you're gonna make my life better, the economy better, or whatever. No, just this guy comes in, he's gonna destroy democracy.
Yeah.
Can't describe what that means, but he's gonna destroy democracy. Our democracy's in peril.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, he was in there 4 years, and if you didn't watch the media, you would see everything was all right. The media made it seem like the world was on fire.
Right.
You watch the media, everything was fine. It's all the news, right? So fear mongers is what they do. Both sides do it. One side did do a little more hysterical than the other side, but that's the game of politics. That's why I'm big on leaving. Try your best to leave emotions out of it and just see things for what it is.
Are you a one party? Are you a one issue kind of voter, or do you vote on several issues? Like when you think about, obviously, like I can't agree with anything on the left right now. First of all, I don't believe in the mutilating a child to change their gender, which is something that they want to give freedom to kids to do that. I don't believe in that. Obviously,
I mean, when I hear things like the state of Minnesota and the state of California supposedly passing laws stating that they will give your child like transitioning medicine, pills, whatever, against the consent or without your parents even knowing, part of me feels like, is that even true? Is that if what I'm reading is real? I find that I haven't even looked into it because it's so crazy. Like, who would be for that, right?
I saw that on Minnesota's. It was like when the legislation was passed in 2023. It was on the government website for Minnesota, where kids could get taken away from parents, where like if they object to, or, basically they would just rip them away based off of like.
Right. And if that's true, when you're telling me it is, I'm not saying you're wrong, but what that basically they're telling you is that they think the state can raise your kids better than you can as a parent.
I think there needs to, like, the fact that we are at a point where government, again, I'll say this very ignorantly, knowing that my understanding of history, my understanding of government is developing, my understanding of what's happening politically is developing. Like I'm constantly in state of development, trying to understand how things work. Like I don't completely understand.
I don't know it all either. First person to tell you that.
But the fact that that's like something that people can actually look at and be like, oh yeah, we're cool with that, just is like mind blowing to me. It's mind blowing to me. Like I don't even like I can't understand that any right person like kids can get the transformation.
You're not old enough to get a tattoo, now to smoke cigarettes. Definitely not a gun.
Yeah.
But you can make a life-changing decision at the age of 12, 13 years old, and that's okay. Crazy. Because why?
It doesn't make any sense.
I haven't heard a good answer yet.
There hasn't been one. A couple of things that I don't really, I think that needs to be addressed. The voter identification thing. It's crazy that in 2024 we're still talking about this week. We're talking about in 2020. It's crazy, in fact, that I think there was something like 24 states don't require ID. The ones that require ID, examples are like Georgia, Indiana, Wisconsin. I think, if I'm not wrong, those are probably all red states.
Wisconsin's a swing state, but
it's a swing state. Okay. And then you have California, New York, and Oregon as states that do not require this. Obviously, those are only a few of them. I don't see what the issue is, though.
First of all, I hear that too, and I haven't heard from anyone either working at polls or people in different states that's like, oh yeah, they don't ask me for I should ask people, because I know people all in different states. Mm-hmm. Do you show your ID at the polls? Because that's an important question, right? Because maybe that's all made up too, and that's just a thing on the right that they're telling you to get pissed off with the left about. Right. I don't know. That sounds, third world countries, you need an ID to freaking vote.
Yeah.
And you're telling me you can't because why? It's racist?
Yeah.
How is it racist?
Right. How is that racist?
You're telling me that, people of color are dumb enough to get their own IDs, right? Because that's why we can't. Like, I don't really understand that.
So it's interesting. Just hearing you say that, right? I can just put my like hat on of like somebody who would argue that, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's just an arrogant way to say that, right? Like that's just arrogant to come off." Like, I don't think that that's arrogant, but like for some reason, someone will say like that's an arrogant, like, "Oh, that's arrogant." Why? Like,
well, the only logical explanation that I could think of for that is, let's get people who aren't allowed to vote so we can get more votes.
Right.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Right.
And the only way to make that happen is to not require IDs that will prove that they're not allowed to vote
Right.
legally.
Right.
That's the only thing that makes sense. Other racist stuff is just, racist is just a new term that people throw around very loosely. It's losing its meaning, honestly.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of not though when the the party on the left plays identity politics. That's all they do is throw out race.
That's what they do. That's what they do. That's what they're best at.
They've been doing this for a while though, right? What would just I guess I won't say a while, but 10 years probably. I think the identity politics, the race baiting and all that stuff. I feel like that's been something that's been pretty prevalent in
longer than 10 years
in politics.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh wow. What's like a memory of yours like when it comes to, because I say this really loosely, like this is developing.
I'm not specific memory, but I've just seen clips of people in the 90s and the 2000s, and even Joe Biden with the interview with Charlemagne.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the thought of the famous line, if you don't know if you're voting for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Yeah, you're not black enough, though.
Right, which insinuates what?
Right.
You're supposed to think a certain way because your skin color is dark.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you vote in a group.
Mm-hmm.
You're no individual.
Right.
That's what that means. That's the part. You're gay, you're a woman, you're dark skinned, you're Puerto Rican, you're whatever. You have to vote a certain way.
Yeah.
Just telling me that I can't think for myself and make my own decisions.
It comes off almost like defensive, right? Because I feel like when you hear someone say something like that, there's acknowledgement to people are starting to think for themselves. Like,
that's true. If they're saying that more, it means they're like, what are you doing? Like, don't think for yourself, you know? And maybe you think for yourself and you do vote left, but think for yourself. Right.
And people are still, I think there's a lot of people out there that are like, yo, this is bad, but we just don't like Trump. And they don't.
Oh, that's a whole different conversation when it comes to the identity.
Check this out. So Elon Musk, I'm gonna put this up here. Elon Musk put out a poll the other day. Since a lot of people have asked, here goes a super unscientific poll. Who will you vote for? Look at that. Out of 5.8 million votes, 73% of them Donald Trump. Like, how are we getting different narratives in the media right now that she's winning this? And again, this isn't something like, when I think about the land, this isn't anti-woman or anti-whatever she is. This is just the state of our country. And I'll follow up with this because PBD posted this the other day. This is what he said. Okay, so I don't know if I shared this with you, so I'll read this quickly, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Stamina is by far the most intimidating quality an opponent can have. President Trump's level of stamina is second to none. And when I showed this to somebody, she was like, "Yeah, but Trump is old," and I was like, "Yeah, but he could play 18 holes of golf like every day." Like that requires a lot of stamina,
and all the rallies and
stuff, and still do all that, right? Okay, he's doing the call from the East Coast, which means, so this was when him and Elon went together, which means it's almost 11 p.m. He's going for almost 3 hours, including the delay. As a founder of a few businesses, one thing I could tell you, founders have as an edge over the peers is their relentless energy to keep going way past their opponents slowing down or stopping. Let me zoom in here a little bit because my eyes are, I don't know if I can anyway. All right. So there's nothing more annoying than an opponent that is unlimited supply of energy. It's annoying, it's intimidating, and it's frustrating. And quite frankly, it causes the type of envy that words can't describe. I'm going to fast forward to the bottom here. Here are 10 questions to help you decide your decision, to help you with your decision to who to vote for. How many interviews have Kamala done?
Since she was announced she was running? Yep. I don't think any.
Okay. How many 3-hour podcasts have Obama, Kamala, or Biden ever done?
I think 0.
Why not? Is it because it's risky? I think the answer to that is yes. Do you, as a voter, prefer one that's willing to openly speak on a live with 0 scripts or teleprompters, or would you prefer all being calculated and scripted? Who would you like to negotiate on your behalf of your investments you make? In parentheses here, taxes. Whose energy would you like if a war breaks out in the middle of the night? Someone who works 6 hours a day, or someone who is the real life Energizer Bunny? Who do you trust? Who do you trust doing more good with your money? Your taxes. High taxes equals money to the government. Low taxes equals money in people's hands. Who do you think our enemies want to see win the election? I mean, case like our enemies don't want to see Donald Trump win this election.
No.
I don't want the government dealing with my money. I mean, bro, I already get taxed crazy money.
Yeah.
I get taxed crazy because I'm in commissioned sales, which is beyond me. Like, I don't even understand, but I do. I get taxed crazy. These thoughts right here should basically sway someone to be like, oh, you know what? But they don't feel they don't feel like the economy is bad.
Look, all those questions right there, they're great, but the truth is, no one's reading all that. The average person isn't reading all that, and the average person isn't looking to be swayed by reading a long thing like that. That's just the truth. It's just what it is. The average American, the average voter, they're either too busy, they're too busy working a bunch of jobs, they're too busy watching their TV shows, they're too busy watching their sports. They just want to go to the polls day of, and most people know who they're voting for already, right?
Right, most people do. Yes.
So while that's great, and I wish everybody would read something like that, some people have so much hatred for Trump on one side that none of those questions matter, right? They're going to vote for him either way.
Sure.
Other people are completely disregarding Trump's character and all the stuff that a lot of people hate about him, and they're going to vote for him either way, no matter what, right?
For sure.
I stopped talking politics mostly with a lot of people last year or so, unless they want to bring it up themselves. But to me, I see that it's very simple. Since 2017 to 2025, which is coming up, I mean, it's been it's an 8-year span, right? So the question is really simple. We've had two candidates that have basically been presidents before, right? People are going to say, "Oh, well, Kamala hasn't announced her plan yet." It's going to be the same thing, if not worse, than what we've had the last 4 years, right? So it was very simple. What did you think? I like to look at it as two most important things to look at. Try your best to look at it without emotion. Is the economy and foreign policy. Did you think we were better off between 2017 and 2021, or 2022 to 2025? Which 4 years did you prefer? And whichever your answer is, you know who to vote for.
Yeah.
It is that simple.
It is that simple.
Right? Because those questions aren't going to sway that answer.
And I think, again, it should be that simple, but I think there's such a combative mindset for the opposing. And again, we'll say, the majority of people are going to vote one way or the other and be what it is, and that kind of fight. But what we see, I feel like, and I think maybe media probably puts a lot of that in our face, is how combative people are. And again, I don't even think it's media. I see it on Facebook every single day.
People are very emotional.
Very emotional about what's happening. And it shouldn't be that way. Like, vote who you vote for. You have a set of ideas. I have a set of ideas. The way you think is going to be completely different the way I think because of the way I live, right? Same thing with religion, right? Like, there's Christians, there's Muslims, there's a bunch of different religions out there. I can't tell you, if you're a Muslim, that you're wrong because you don't believe how I believe, and vice versa. Unfortunately, we've gotten to a really nasty place with this, and that's the scariest part.
I don't see it ever coming together.
I don't either.
Unfortunately,
I don't think so either.
I don't consider myself a real pessimistic person, but COVID was a good
launching point,
case study of what happens when the states disagree largely on policies when it comes to, for example, in the pandemic, right? And that was light. Right. If it gets to a point where we're so divided politically on whatever the big issues now are, abortion, about the border, about economy, about, transgender stuff or whatever, it could be a situation where we were like the states were in 2020, 2021, some states talking about, oh, any person that comes from this state have to show your ID, have to show your passport, this. I mean, how are we united if that happens, right? We're not that far from that at all, I think. I hope I'm wrong.
I don't know if I asked you this but I said, either text you or was talking to Claire about some stuff. I don't think that in this country in the next 5 years it would be a shock to see a civil war in this country. Who? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be about this stuff though. I would hope not, because then that's just like that's like the deep stuff. But it just seems like we're inching that close. I mean, you saw outside of the DNC, like there was pro Hamas burning,
that's all the time.
burning a United States flag.
Yeah, they've been burning flags for decades.
Yeah. It's I don't know if it's the media that's just putting this stuff in our face, and it's just like it's intent. And it's interesting, we'll bridge over, because we can get off the politics here a little bit. We'll bridge over to the book Outwitting the Devil, because I do think it's interesting where Napoleon is interviewing him, and he's like, hey, what is one of your most tactful ways to distract people or to sway people? And he said propaganda. And with propaganda, it's easy to in the guise of war. And you can kind of see that happening. The propaganda, even again for me, everything that we're saying today, we'll call it propaganda. Like I only see stuff that I agree with. I don't really see the stuff that I don't agree with. I see it far and few between. I try to seek some of that stuff out. And I'm not at a point though where I can, like, I'm never going to get to a point where I look at you as someone who thinks differently than me and be like, yo, you're wrong. That's evil. You're this, you're that. I'll never be like that.
I don't see myself being like that either.
Like, I mean, obviously if there's some really extreme stuff, like, yeah, but,
right.
But like for who you vote for, what you believe in, what you stand for, policies. No, I would never do that. So we have that, right? We have that on both sides. But it's interesting in that book, Outwitting the Devil, how that's what he says he uses to create this kind of madness, and it's happening right in front of us.
Creates chaos, creates division, creates confusion. Because now, especially after COVID, if people didn't see the propaganda during the media during COVID, then I don't see how you're going to see it, right? But now we don't know what's truth and what's not.
We don't.
Now I question everything. I'm a skeptic for everything. I don't care what side of the news is coming from.
Me too.
I saw this funny thing online. I don't know if it was true or not, but somebody had posted, I talked to a friend of mine that had come here from China, and they had asked me, how come everybody here watches the news? And they said, well, what do you mean? Well, in China, we don't watch our news because we know it's all fake propaganda.
Wow.
But you guys here still watching as if like it's the truth. And I thought about it like, yeah, why are we still so like, oh, I heard it on a CNN, or I heard it on NPR, or I heard it on Fox News. It's like they all got their own agenda, Watch it to know what they're trying to tell you, but don't be so gullible for that stuff.
I saw a quote. I don't know.
It's just easier to be gullible. It's easier to just see what they're saying, believe it, and be like, no, that's the truth because I heard it on CBS News this last night. It's easy, right?
And I can't wait till I finish reading this article, but I do think there's a little bit of a level of science to it, right? And this stuff, the Orwellian life that it seems like we're living in right now, the Ministry of Truth and all that stuff, like
they're talking about censoring speech now.
Yeah, they're talking about censoring speech.
Hate speech, aka speech that they hate.
Exactly, that's right. There definitely is a level of science where we are like, it's like you said, tribal. We are conforming to other beliefs of other people. Again, this is beyond my intellect and research because I'm trying to really grasp it, but I like wonder like what the end game is with all of this. And I mean, that's where like I start thinking like, is it the end of times? Like, here we are, Bible talks about end of time, some of this stuff happening, but is this just a pattern? Are we repeating itself? Like we talked about the Fourth Turning book, the podcast that PBD did with the author of that book. I think it was William Strauss. Are we just living through one of those cycles again? And then what happens after the cycle? Like, is it going to get really bad? Is it going to get ugly? Like, what's next? That's the uncertainty that, I've gotten away from living this like fear, like, oh my God, like I said earlier, the stock market is going to crash. There's going to be a civil war. Like, 4 years ago, I'd be tripping right now. If Paul Martinez is 4 years, if this was my mentality 4 years ago in 2024, I'd be like digging a hole in my backyard to build a bunker. I feel like, because it's like but I'm learning that things are cyclical and things kind of just go, and this is just history and the nature of what history is.
It definitely feels like a very unique
It
time,
does, though.
more
Yeah.
than in other, definitely in our lifetimes. Like 2020 forward, it just seemed like, what's next, right?
Escalating. Yeah.
What's next? Is it gonna get worse before it gets better, and you think it's getting a little better, and then something else happens,
I know, especially when, like, I think there's a few times where, like, man, I'm not following politics right now. It just seems like things are just, nothing's happening. All of a sudden, Trump gets shot.
something happens.
It's
Yeah,
like, yo, what is
some
it?
riot, some mass shooting, some some nuclear plant that got blown up in
I saw
Russia,
that.
some
Yeah, yeah,
pipeline
yeah.
here, some the monkeypox came out
Yeah,
somewhere in
yeah,
Africa. Like,
yeah. There is like this underlying eeriness that I have, where it's like, man, what's gonna happen? Again, it doesn't stop me like it used to, like where it used to consume my thoughts. I remember when Russia invaded Ukraine, and I was like, oh no, World War III, like, here it is, we're here, it's gonna happen. And, like, I'm not saying that it's not gonna happen. What I'm saying is that I didn't have that initial emotional reaction to that.
yeah, life goes on. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
we're not going to stop our lives for it. I
yeah,
mean, something could happen catastrophically where it will have to, but
yeah.
more than likely it won't. I think about last year when in Peru. In Peru last year, the president tried to dismantle Congress on his own,
Mm-hmm.
failed, and tried to flee the country. And while he was fleeing, the military, the Peruvian military, arrested him.
Mm-hmm.
So you could imagine at that time what was going on in the country,
Right.
right? The news was straight chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Supporters of the president were coming into the city, rioting, burning things up, some reports of car bombs. And then, people who were for the other side also kind of clashing, some protests, right? As if that's normal. That's what you would think.
Sure.
So on the news, it seems like it's going crazy. And then I see my cousins down there, and they're going out to restaurants, they're going to the beaches and all that. They talk about we got to avoid certain streets or whatnot, but life goes on.
Yeah.
So with what's happening now in this country, I mean, God forbid it gets that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it does, these are all going to be isolated incidences, right? It might affect us somehow with the economy scaring the market. No, but life's going to continue. I mean, we still got to get to work. We still got to try to progress in our lives, take care of our families, all that. So
I love when PBD goes, I'm 51%. I don't know if you noticed him saying this recently, because I'm 51% future looks bright. I'm 49% only the paranoid survive. And that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I'm at.
I mean, you have to be skeptic. You can't just be like naive and just think everything's roses.
Right.
I mean, that's how you get caught slipping. So, you have to expect. What do they say? You gotta hope for the best, plan for the worst, expect the worst, whatever it is. Yeah. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
But most things we worry about don't happen. No. And we're programmed. I heard something a few months back on a podcast I listened to, a few episodes that I've listened to, but he said our brain processes like 60,000 thoughts, and 2/3 of them are negative daily. Like, that's crazy to think about.
It's a lot of thoughts.
That's a lot of
24-hour day.
It's a lot of thoughts. I mean, some of them. I mean, think about it. Like, we sit at our desks. Our minds are going. Like, this thing's happening.
Yeah.
And it could be subconscious thought. Like, you just a bunch of stuff. So naturally, we go to the negative thoughts.
Right.
But yeah, I am on that side. Like, I'm always going to be skeptical about things. I don't disagree with having that mindset to be skeptical, but yeah, think about things in a positive light. Like, things are going to be okay. And they will. I truly believe they will. I actually do believe it. Like, yes, we talked about a lot that could happen, whether it be civil war, what happens with the election, stuff like that. But ultimately, I think we all have the path forward. The biggest thing that I'm not certain what would happen is if this this debt collapse that's going to happen, this America, that the amount of debt that we're in as a country. I don't know what that looks like if it happens, like when we collapse, and because it's going to happen. I just don't know like how to prepare and what that looks like. That I think that's the one thing that I hope to gain more knowledge on in the coming months and years.
Me and you both, because I still don't really understand much about who we're in debt to,
Mm-hmm.
who we're paying off, why we're in so much debt. You see that number, and I think it's Times Square that's always going up, the trillions of dollars that we're constantly in debt.
Yeah. I
I,
saw
I
this here. Actually, I'll show it to you. I saw this the other day. Everybody should know about the U.S. debt clock. So this is the debt clock. Look at that right there, man. Look at those numbers. So federal spending, the U.S. national debt, Medicaid, Medicare. What's this on the U.S. total interest paid, bank interest received, student loan debt, U.S. Treasury dollars. Like that's crazy, man.
that's
Like,
why they
just,
want us distracted and scared and divided, to keep our minds off that.
that's crazy.
Because that's
So like that, I would say this is the one thing that I hope to get more understanding of, and to how to prepare for making sure that my family, like the eeriest feeling again. 51% future looks bright. 49% only the paranoid survive. I like that PBD. He says that, but the scariest thing is like this seems like it's going to collapse, and what will happen is what I'm like. Fuck. Like damn. Like, am I prepared, or is it just going to be something that, are businesses across the country going to go down? Like, are banks going to come in and swoop up all the homes? Like that's just like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't.
So
I can't sit there. And
TBD, right? To be determined.
To be